You'll notice when I come to the side, we lose our particle. Because we're using a quad, that's going to be a problem. Now, using a quad or a plane is really good because there's much less, there's far fewer rather vertices in there. So we don't have to worry too much what we're saying. But let's make it so that we don't notice this is a plane. To do that, we're going to go back to our material, scroll to the bottom, and we will see billboard. There's multiple kinds. We want particle billboard. If we just put billboard enabled, it won't access any of the particle information. Like any changes we make here won't affect the material. Don't want that. If we put it to Y billboard, the left and right will work fine, right? The image follows us around. Let's get rid of this Omni line. Don't need that anymore. So the image follows us around, but if I go up, that's not up, that's up. Let's slow down this camera. You'll notice how the up and down isn't following us. So we're going to go to particle billboard. We're going to go to our GPU particles, back to our material, back to our billboard, and we're going to set that to particle billboard. So now, as I move up and down, the texture is always going to be pointing at the camera, which will give us lots and lots of things we can do. Be aware that by default, if I change the scale of the particle in the process material, it won't change the actual material, which means, let's say I change my scale to 0.25, nothing has changed. This can be annoying. To fix this, go to materials, go back to your billboards. If we're on particle billboard, go to keep scale. And now we're generating anywhere from 0.25 to 1 with this weird flickery thing going on. We can see the scales changing. That's ugly. We can do better than that. All right. One more thing I want to change. Vertex color, use as albedo. Why do we want to do this? Well, if we go to our process material and go to color, let's say I give this a nice red color. There's no red here. I can't see any red. Reason for that is we're using the material color. Don't want to use the material color. So I'm going to go to the material and use as albedo. And now we're using whatever we set here. So that's our basic setup. So as a real quick thing, I'm going to turn on my transparency. I will decide whether or not I need shading. I will pick my alpha, my albedo rather. I'll go to particle billboard and I'll go to keep scale on. I will probably want to change blend mode to add. And this starts giving us some really nice effects. Basically, instead of saying, oh, this red is already here, leave that red there, we're saying, this red is here, add this to whatever color information we have. So the more information we have, the brighter it is. You'll see it's brighter here in the middle. I'm going to take that off for now and add it later so we can see it properly where it's a bit more obvious. There we go. Let's play with some things that can make this really fun. Okay, so we have, let's turn our scale to 1 on 1. We have this simple little fire. It says fire. It looks like a splat to me. We have this splat. Some things we can do. We can say, go to angle. Rather than always bring in the image the same way, bring it in anywhere from, let's say, -90 to +90. This image is not rotating. So if I put it here, all it's doing is once per second, it's creating a new one within those parameters. Let's actually go the whole hog, say -180 to 180. So every second, we're getting a new one of these. Okay. Now, if we have 8 of those, it's starting to look like a stylized, like Sin City blood splat, but it's not quite what I'm going for yet. Let's go back and add in that blend mode add. Okay, so it's a little brighter in the center. It looks like an energy source or a light source, but we can make this a little bit more fun. Some tricks I like to do. Under scale and under color, in fact, under a few of these, but these are the ones I like to play with a lot, you'll see we can create a gradient. So let's go to scale gradient. Actually, let's go to color gradient. So we're going to go color ramp, new gradient texture 1D, or one-dimensional color gradient. Click on it. And right now we're going from black to white. You'll notice these aren't white, these are red. This color gets added to that color. So I'm going to change this color to white so we can see what we're doing. And let's use our swatch. And I don't know, we'll start with pink and go red. Now, because we're adding this, in the center, it's going to get much, much brighter because there's always information there. Out at the edges, it's going to start looking a little bit more interesting. Other fun things we can do here, if we drag this point in, we click on the left to make a new point. It's just, what is the color at this point? It's whatever the first color is. Let's give that an alpha of 0. So the color's going to fade in. And we're starting to lose that jerky flicker information. Do the same thing at the end here. So I'm going to take my final position, drag it a little bit, left click to create a new one, and just drag the alpha down to 0. So now, instead of this jittery thing we had, we've got something a little bit more elegant. They're fading in and out. It's still a bit jittery, and there's some things we can fix with that. One of them is we're going to do the same trick with a scale. So go to Scale Curve, New Curve Texture. I'm not going to worry about the maximum value because I don't want to go below 0. You can do if you want. I don't want to go above 1. You can do if you want. If you want, this can go 10 times scale or 200 times scale. 0 1 is fine with me. I'm just going to right click to add a point at the 1 position. And again here, and let's just drag that down here.
Ooh, I like that.
Okay. So it's starting to move a bit more, but it still looks a bit more artificial. So here's my other trick. We're going to go to angular velocity. We're going to say you've got a minimum of -5 and a maximum of 5. And you know what? I think these need to be a bit slower. So let's go to time. There's actually 2 times. We want the first time. Let's say each particle to be 4 seconds. And give it a little bit of explosiveness so they don't all happen at the same time. Let's say there's more than 8 of them. Let's say there's 16.
That makes it much brighter in the middle, doesn't it?
Yeah. And we should now have something that looks a little bit more flowy, a little bit more interesting. Now, obviously, we want to tweak this, right, for whatever effect you're trying to make, but it's a good starting point. So we can go over here, and let's say this curve is going to slow down much more.
So is that the rate of change of the scale of the curve?
This is the scale over time.
Over the time you set earlier, so those 4 seconds?
Over the 4 seconds. So at the end of the 4 seconds, that is the scale. At the beginning of the 4 seconds, that is the scale.
Nice.
Okay. And we can change the scale minimum. So like this kind of breaks the illusion because the zoom in and out is too much, but it's a thing we can do. Okay. Now what we can do is we can start giving this a direction. You'll notice I turned off gravity. I usually don't worry too much about gravity. The reason for that is I can do the same thing in direction. Now, at the moment, by default, it's set to X, which is this red over here, with a 45-degree spread. If I give that an initial velocity of 1, that's what we start seeing. Not actually what we want, but it's the thing that can happen. Let's say we turn that to a 0 spread. We now have a line.
That's pretty awesome. That looks like you could use that as the smoke coming out of an exhaust or tire on a road, that sort of thing.
Excellent point.
Roderick says, by the way, that the ball, the orb that you had earlier, that looks like the corona of a jittery star. And I was thinking this would fit nicely in like a space game.
It would.